So the last thing I want to show is this ability of Firebase to do real-time synchronization, to update not only the console, but to update all of the clients who are watching the database in real time. And this is something that makes Firebase stand out against a lot of other databases. So to do this, what we want to do is we want to set a handler at the very top. It doesn't really matter where we set it, but we want to set it not inside of a button handler. Let's set it here besides the reset and the read button. Okay, so this is at the top level. This will run when the web page is loaded. So we're going to say database ref user slash. So we're going to find a reference for users. Let me reset this so everybody's here. We're going to find a reference for users, and then we're going to do something with this. So now instead of doing once value to get the value once, what we can now do is call on value. And that subtle spelling difference is very important because once means read me the data once right now and I'm done. On means watch the value, monitor the value of users, and if there's a change, on change of value, call this callback function with snapshot set. And once again, we need to get the data out with snapshot val. So let's console log. I'm just gonna say users changed, all users, and see what happens. Okay, so let's see what happens here. So recall what we did here is that we set a basically a listener on the users collection in Firebase. It says that anytime users changes in any way, call this function, callback function with snapshot as my parameter, and then I'm going to convert this to an all users by getting its value out, and I'm going to print it out. Okay, let's see what happens. So when I reload, we have to look at the console. When I reload, it says user/change, and the object is Carol, John, Philip. So it turns out that when you first load the page, this page doesn't know what users are, so it'll trigger an event that says user has changed from nothing, I don't know what users are, to this full content of the database. And then let's see what happens when I delete somebody. So if I delete Carol, let's see what happens on the console. If I delete Carol, it'll say users changed, John, Philip. And if I delete Philip, where John's the last one remaining, it'll say users changed John. And when I reset the database, notice how it says users changed null, Philip, John, Carol, John, Philip. It actually issues an event every time someone's data is set, and then the whole database as a whole changes. And of course, if I put in Bobby here to insert, watch what happens to the console. It says users change. It did change, and the new thing here is Bobby, but there's all the old stuff already. So the really powerful thing here is that the Firebase itself will call this function for you whenever user/changes. So what we can do is we can actually just display the user data in a fairly simple way. And to do that, we're going to say this. We're going to say if all users, which means that all users is not the null or empty list. If it's not null, what we're going to do is we're going to first of all reset the status. So this will clear the HTML. And then what we're going to do is we're going to append, just a phrase, list of users. And then what we're going to do, well, let's see if we can get that far already. Let's see if a list of users appears. So when I look for here, good, list of users does appear. And it's because the user changes, that event is triggered once at the beginning of the page load, no matter what. So what do we want the list of users to be? Well, we want to use object.keys of all users to iterate over the keys of all users. So recall that all users that we're printing out is an object with four keys in this case, Bobby, Carol, John, Philip. Object.keys will iterate through them, and we're going to do a for each, and each time the loop or function is run, we're going to call it with name. And let's just console log just for simplicity, let's just status append name. Just to see what happens. It probably won't look good, but I want to iterate through it. And then it says, I'm just going to append Bobby, Carol, John, and Philip. There's no spacing here because I'm just appending the raw letters to the HTML. So it looks not great, but at least we know that all 4 people are being loaded. And let's see what happens when I try to delete Carol. This whole thing should update, and now Carol is gone. It's Bobby, John, and Philip. Because users has changed, the data now has only Bobby, John, and Philip and no Carol, so that this will get updated as well. To make this look a little nicer, instead of just appending name, we're going to append an li entry, which is a bulleted list, plus name, plus space, plus all users name dot job. So recall that all users is an object, and all users bracket name will get me, all users is this object. All user bracket name would be, if I'm Philip, for example, it will get me the value of here, and then we can do a dot job to drill in and get professor out. So it's all users dot name dot job, which should be professor, and then plus, let's do another space, and then all users dot name dot pet. Plus, we're going to close the li tag. This is not the greatest HTML, but it just shows my point. So li will make a bullet list. So in each element of the bulleted list, we have a name, job, and pet, which is all the information we want. So it's reload. And right here, it says list of users, Bobby, mechanic, bear, John, student, Philip, John, student, dog, Philip, professor, cat. And what happens when I remove Bobby now? When I remove Bobby, notice what happens here. Bobby is gone from the list because it triggered the user's change and it just created a whole new list without Bobby. And then what happens when I remove John? Notice here, I just hit delete and this list updates automatically for me, which is pretty cool. So once again, this is the way to monitor a particular piece of data in Firebase for changes. And when it does change, anytime it changes, this callback function is run. So this callback function may be run 100 times if you have 100 changes. Notice how this is very different than the once event handler. Once just literally runs once and that's it, and grabs the value once, whereas this is continually monitoring the value and calling this callback function whenever anything has changed. So the cool thing here is it's at real time, but the other cool thing is that it's multi-user. So let's say I have 2 people on PetsApp. Imagine these 2 people are on different sides of the world and they're both visiting the same URL. And now because they're visiting the same URL and they both are accessing Firebase, they will both see the state of the database in real time, which right now only has Philip in it. So now here is the cool part. Let's say the left person decides to reset the database. It's not surprising that the left side, this will be repopulated. But what will be really surprising is if this gets repopulated. So let's I'm clicking on the left. Let's see what the person on the right sees. And beautiful. Notice how the person on the right sees the updates pretty much instantaneously as the person on the left. And that's because both users registered this on handler for users so that this person who might be in Europe somewhere is running the on handler and waiting for a change from Firebase, and so is this original person. So let's remove John, see what happens. Notice how they're both gone. Remove Philip. They're both gone, and then reset, and everybody's here. Now, even cooler than 2 people is more people. So let's try, whoops. I'm gonna move this off screen. Let's try 4 people. Let's see, whoops. Let's try one more. Okay, we have 4 people now. So imagine we have 4 users. You can imagine more users. These people are all looking at the PetsApp, beautifully styled PetsApp website. I'm gonna move these 2 up a bit. And now, drum roll please, let's try to modify the database. Let's say this person wants to modify the database in some way. Whoops. And this person says, let's delete Philip. Okay, I'm gonna click on the upper right person. Now look what happens on all of the 4 users. When I click delete, Philip is magically gone from everybody's UI. And notice how nobody else had to do anything. The UI automatically updated because all of the JavaScript that everyone's running registered this on handler so that Firebase will be guaranteed to call this callback function whenever any data in user slash changes, or more precisely, whenever the user slash collection changes. So let's add Bobby. Let's say who want to add Bobby? This person wants to add Bobby. Bobby mechanic bear.jpg. When I click on the lower right, look what happens everywhere. And everybody's here. Bobby, 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 and Bobby. And unsurprisingly, the state of the database has Bobby as well. So in this way, the real database on the cloud has been synchronized with the views of the database through all 4 clients. I can go all day, right? I can update somebody's stuff. So let's say Carol is a software engineer, more particularly, and her pet is now a dog. So Carol used to be engineer bear. Now we're going to insert, and on all 4, Carol says software engineer dog, software engineer dog, software engineer dog, software engineer dog. And that is it for PetsApp v3. So just to conclude, we've refactored it to completely use Firebase now and not rely on our own Node.js backend. So recall we added this snippet of code from the Firebase website once we registered our project. And then we create this Firebase variable and then reset database. I'm just going to erase all the comment out code. We'll do a remove followed by sets. Getting a specific, this will monitor the user slash collection for changes and do stuff accordingly, which allows us to do something like if we remove John, then I want to hit delete. John is deleted from everybody. That's what lets us do cool stuff like this. The on handler lets us do that. And then the read button click is we're going to do a once in order to get one value out. And then the callback function will set the HTML accordingly. All users will do once on user slash, and then insert will do a set, and then delete will do a remove. And that is it for PetsApp v3.